Admiral Kang Minho stood on the bridge of the UES Baekdu and watched the stars through the massive viewing screen that covered the front wall of his command center. The Third Expeditionary Fleet moved through space like a pack of metal predators, hunting in the dark void between worlds. 12 human warships sailed in perfect formation around their flagship, while their engines left trails of blue fire in the endless black. The Baekdu was the largest ship humans had ever built for war. Its hull was 3 kilometers long and covered in armor plates thick enough to stop asteroid impacts. Weapon systems lined every surface like the spines of some ancient Earth creature. Gun turrets rotated slowly as they tracked imaginary targets, while missile launchers waited in silence for orders to fire. The ship looked like it was built to fight gods and win. Minho had commanded this fleet for 2 years now, and still felt amazed every time he looked at what humans could create when they put their minds to making war. Earth had taught them well about survival and fighting. Every storm that tried to kill them made them stronger. Every predator that hunted them made them deadlier. Every disaster that destroyed their cities made them build better ones. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of computers and the gentle whisper of air recycling systems. His crew worked at their stations with the calm efficiency that came from training in Earth's most dangerous environments. These people had learned to fly in hurricanes and fight in radiation storms. Space was almost peaceful compared to home. Lieutenant Kim Seojin sat at the communications station and monitored the subspace channels for any signs of trouble in this sector of the galaxy. Her fingers moved across holographic controls as she filtered through the constant chatter of automated signals and background noise that filled the void between stars. Most of it was meaningless data from navigation beacons and weather satellites, but sometimes important messages came through. The fleet was returning from a patrol mission in the outer colonies when the signal arrived. It came from the direction of the Kepler 442 system and carried the universal distress code that all spacefaring species were supposed to recognize. Seojin heard it first as a faint beeping pattern that cut through the static like a knife. She turned toward the Admiral, with wide eyes, and spoke in a voice that carried across the bridge. The automated translation systems are picking up something strange from grid reference 77 Alpha. It sounds like a distress call, but the language is completely unknown to our databases. Minho walked over to her station and listened as the computer played back the message. The words were musical and flowing like water over stones, but carried an undertone of desperate fear that needed no translation. Behind the alien voice, he could hear the sounds of explosions and screaming that spoke of violence and death. Run it through the deep analysis protocols and see what you can make of it. Also send the data to Commander Lee Sora in the Xenobiology Department. If this is our first contact with a new species, we need to handle it properly. The message played again. And this time the translation software managed to pick out a few key phrases. The word for help came through clearly along with coordinates and what seemed to be a plea for someone to save them from attackers. Numbers scrolled across the screen showing the estimated distance and travel time to reach the source of the transmission. Captain, Park Ji-hoon emerged from the elevator that connected the bridge to the rest of the ship. His destroyer Halasan was running alongside the flagship, and he had come aboard to discuss patrol schedules with the Admiral. He was a thin man with sharp eyes who had earned his command through skill in combat rather than politics. His ship was smaller than the Baekdu, but just as deadly in its own way. "What do we have, Admiral?" His voice was calm, but Minho could hear the edge of excitement that came whenever something interesting happened during these long patrols through empty space. Possible first contact situation in the Kepler system. Someone is calling for help, and it sounds like they are under attack. The translation systems are still working on the language, but the meaning seems clear enough. Ji-hoon moved to the tactical display and studied the star charts that showed their current position, relative to the distress signal. His fingers traced possible approach routes while he calculated fuel consumption and travel times. The Kepler system was only 6 light-years away, which meant they could reach it in less than 4 hours if they pushed their hyperspace engines to maximum output. Do we know anything about what might be attacking them? The question came from Major Choi Dae-hyun, who had just arrived on the bridge. He commanded the Marine Battalion aboard the flagship, and his presence usually meant someone was expecting trouble. He was a big man who looked like he could wrestle bears and probably had during his training on Earth. Nothing yet, but Commander Lee should have some answers soon. She knows more about alien species than anyone else in the fleet. The turbo-lift doors opened again, and Lee Sora stepped onto the bridge carrying a data tablet filled with preliminary analysis results. She was a small woman with quick movements, and an even quicker mind who had spent years studying what little information humans had gathered about other intelligent species in the galaxy. Most of it came from intercepted transmissions and long-range observations, since humans had never actually met any aliens face-to-face. I have some initial findings, Admiral. The language structure suggests a peaceful trading species, probably from a low-gravity world based on the vocal patterns. They call themselves the Volani, and they seem to be merchants who travel between star systems selling goods and technology. She touched her tablet and brought up a three-dimensional display showing the estimated size and design of the ships that had sent the distress call. They were sleek and elegant with smooth curves that spoke of efficiency rather than combat capability. Solar collectors spread out like wings to gather energy from nearby stars, while cargo holds dominated the central sections. These are not warships, Admiral. They have minimal defensive systems and no apparent weapons. If someone is attacking them, they are basically helpless to fight back. The tactical display updated with new information as the translation computers finished processing the distress message. A full transcript appeared on the main screen along with analysis of background sounds and electromagnetic signatures. The picture it painted was grim. The Volani convoy consisted of 8 merchant vessels carrying trade goods between distant colonies when they were ambushed by unknown attackers in the asteroid belt around Kepler 442. Half their ships were already destroyed, and the survivors were trapped in a debris field with nowhere to run. Their attackers called themselves the Thrakari and seemed to view the Volani as prey rather than equals. Commander Lee brought up what little information they had about this Thrakari species. Long-range observations suggested they were more aggressive than the Volani, but still used relatively primitive technology compared to human standards. Their ships were angular and covered with weapons systems that looked designed more for intimidation than actual combat effectiveness. Admiral, what are your orders? The question came from Captain Song Minji, whose cruiser Jiri was the second largest ship in the fleet. Her voice carried over the communication system from her own bridge where she waited for instructions. Minho studied the tactical display and considered his options. Human doctrine called for caution when dealing with unknown alien species, but these Volani were clearly victims rather than threats. The Thrakari raiders were committing what amounted to piracy and murder on an interstellar scale. Earth had taught humans to despise bullies and protect the innocent. Set course for the Kepler system maximum hyperspace velocity. All ships are to prepare for possible combat operations upon arrival. We will assess the situation when we get there and respond accordingly. The bridge erupted into controlled activity as orders flowed through the communication system to every ship in the fleet. Navigation computers calculated jump coordinates, while weapons systems ran diagnostic checks. Hyperspace engines began charging with power that could tear holes in the fabric of space itself. Jahoon returned to his destroyer while Dae-hyun went to brief his Marines on the possibility of boarding actions against alien vessels. Lee Sora remained on the bridge to monitor communications and prepare for humanity's first official contact with another intelligent species. The fleet jumped into hyperspace with a flash of blue light that briefly outshone the nearby stars. They left behind empty space and headed toward a system where strangers were dying and calling for help. None of them knew they were about to announce humanity's presence to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible. The Volani had asked for rescue, and the Deathworlders were coming to answer their call. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system like a collection of metal storms emerging from the void. Reality twisted and bent around their arrival points as massive engines converted impossible energies back into normal space. The Baekdu led the formation with its escort destroyers spreading out in a protective screen, while the cruisers took flanking positions that would let them respond to threats from any direction. Admiral Kang Minho stood at his command station and watched the tactical display update as sensors swept through the system looking for signs of the distress call they had received. The main star burned yellow and bright in the center, while rocky planets orbited in their ancient patterns. An asteroid belt stretched between the third and fourth worlds like a broken necklace of stone and ice. Lieutenant Kim Seojin worked frantically. at her communication station as she tried to establish contact with the Vellani ships. Her equipment was designed to cut through the interference of solar storms and cosmic radiation, but alien communication systems might use completely different protocols. She adjusted frequencies and power levels while hoping that someone would answer her calls. The sensors found them first. 8 contacts moved slowly through the asteroid field, while dozens of smaller signatures surrounded them like predators circling wounded prey. The Vellani merchant ships were exactly what Commander Sora had predicted. Sleek vessels with elegant curves and minimal defenses that spoke of a species more interested in trade than warfare. The attackers were different. Thrakari ships looked like they had been designed by someone who thought fear was more important than efficiency. Angular hulls bristled with weapons while armored plates covered every surface. They moved with the aggressive confidence of wolves hunting sheep. Admiral, I am getting responses from both groups. The Vellani are transmitting on multiple frequencies and they sound terrified. The Thrakari leader is demanding to know who we are and ordering us to leave immediately. Minho walked over to the communication station and listened as the translation computers worked to make sense of the alien languages. The Vellani voices were high and musical but filled with panic and desperation. They seemed unable to believe that anyone had actually responded to their distress call. The Thrakari were different. Their leader spoke with the harsh authority of someone who was used to being obeyed without question. He called himself Warlord Vextar and made it clear that he considered this system to be under his control. Any interference would be met with immediate and overwhelming force. Captain Park Ji-hoon appeared on the main screen as his image was transmitted from the bridge of the Halasan. His destroyer was moving into position to get a better view of the tactical situation, while his weapons systems remained powered but not targeted. His expression was grim as he studied the alien formations. Admiral, the Thrakari have 53 ships in the immediate area with more contacts on the edge of sensor range. They have the Vellani completely surrounded and are picking them off one by one. From what I can see, they are not trying to capture prisoners or salvage cargo. This looks like pure extermination. The tactical display zoomed in on the asteroid field and showed the details of what was happening. Thrakari ships were systematically destroying Vellani vessels with concentrated weapons fire while ignoring any attempts at communication or surrender. Debris fields marked the locations where merchant ships had already died. Commander Sora stood beside the admiral and studied the sensor readings with growing horror. Her xenobiology training had taught her to look for signs of intelligence and culture in alien behavior. What she saw here was organized slaughter on a scale that made her stomach turn. This is not warfare, Admiral. The Thrakari are not trying to win territory or capture resources. They are hunting the Vellani like animals for sport or some other purpose. We do not understand yet. Major Choi Dae-hyun joined the conversation from the Marine Preparation Bay where his soldiers were checking their equipment and preparing for possible boarding actions. His voice carried the controlled anger of a professional warrior who had seen too much violence in his career. Admiral, request permission to launch reconnaissance drones for closer observation. My Marines need to know the internal layout of these alien ships if we end up having to board them. Minho considered his options while watching the slow destruction of the Vellani convoy. Human military doctrine emphasized overwhelming force, applied quickly and decisively. But first contact protocols required careful assessment and diplomatic solutions when possible. The problem was that diplomacy took time, and the Vellani were dying right now. Launch the drones, but keep them passive. I want detailed scans of all alien vessels, but no active targeting or aggressive maneuvers. Lieutenant Kim, prepare a message for transmission on all frequencies. Seojin worked quickly to set up the communication array for maximum range and clarity. The message would be transmitted in the universal mathematical language that all technological species should understand, along with basic audio and visual components. It would be humanity's first official statement to the galaxy. This is Admiral Kang Minho of the Terran Defense Coalition speaking for the United Earth States. We have received a distress call from vessels in this system and are responding under interstellar rescue protocols. All hostile actions against civilian ships must cease immediately while we establish communication. The response was immediate and hostile. Warlord Vextar appeared on the main screen as his image was transmitted from the lead Thrakari vessel. He was a tall creature with gray skin and angular features that spoke of a species evolved for aggression. His eyes held the cold intelligence of a natural predator who had never learned to fear anything. Unknown aliens. You will leave this system immediately or share the fate of these pathetic Villani. We are the Thrakari Empire and we do not recognize your authority or your rescue protocols. These creatures are our prey, and you have no right to interfere. The Villani voices became more desperate as they realized that their potential rescuers were being threatened by the same force that was destroying them. Their leader identified himself as Elder Thekmiel and transmitted a detailed account of the attack along with information about Thrakari raiding tactics. Commander Lee translated the Villani messages while studying the visual data that showed their ship designs and crew members. The creatures were small and delicate with pale blue skin and large eyes that seemed designed for low-light conditions. Their vessels contained families and children who had never expected to face violence like this. Admiral, the Villani are describing a pattern of attacks across multiple star systems. The Thrakari have been hunting civilian populations for months and taking prisoners for unknown purposes. This convoy was traveling between trade worlds when they were ambushed. The reconnaissance drones reached the battle area and began transmitting detailed sensor data back to the human fleet. What they found confirmed the worst fears about Thrakari intentions. Several Villani ships showed signs of boarding actions where crew members had been taken alive before their vessels were destroyed. Captain Song Minji contacted the flagship from her cruiser Jiri with weapons analysis that painted a clearer picture of what they were facing. The Thrakari used energy weapons and kinetic projectiles that were effective against other alien species, but would barely scratch human military shields. Their armor was designed to stop similar weapons rather than the advanced systems that Earth had developed. These aliens are fighting with technology that is at least 2 centuries behind our current capabilities, Admiral. Their weapons might hurt us if they concentrated everything they had on a single target, but our shields are designed to operate in much more hostile environments. The tactical display updated with threat assessments and firing solutions as the human fleet moved deeper into the system. Every ship was ready for combat, but waiting for orders from their admiral. The Thrakari continued their attacks on the remaining Villani while taunting the humans with messages about their weakness and cowardice. Warlord Vextar made his final mistake when he opened fire on a Villani hospital ship that was clearly marked with medical symbols and contained wounded civilians. The explosion lit up the asteroid field like a small sun and marked the end of any possibility for peaceful resolution. Minho looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew and saw the same cold anger that he felt burning in his own chest. These Thrakari thought they could commit genocide while threatening the people who had come to help their victims. They were about to learn why humans were considered the most dangerous species ever to emerge from a death world. All ships, this is Admiral Kang. The Thrakari have rejected diplomatic contact and continue attacking civilian targets. We are authorized to use all necessary force to protect the remaining Villani vessels and eliminate the threat to interstellar shipping in this system. The human fleet began moving forward with the deadly purpose of predators who had finally found prey worthy of their attention. The battle began when the Thrakari opened fire on the approaching human fleet with everything they had. Energy beams and kinetic projectiles filled the space between the two forces like a deadly light show that would have been beautiful if it was not meant to kill. Warlord Vextar had ordered a concentrated attack on the lead human ship, believing that destroying their command vessel would scatter the rest like frightened animals. The weapon struck the Bekdu's shields and simply vanished. Energy that could have melted through the hull of any Thrakari vessel was absorbed and dispersed by defensive systems designed to protect against solar flares and cosmic radiation. Kinetic rounds that could punch through asteroid rock bounced off armor plating that was built to survive impacts, with space debris traveling at interstellar velocities. Admiral Kang Minho watched the tactical display as damage reports came back, showing exactly 0 harm to his flagship. The Thrakari had just demonstrated that their most powerful weapons could not even scratch the paint on a human warship. It was like watching children throw rocks at a battleship. All ships, you are cleared to engage. Show them what happens when someone threatens innocent people in our presence. Captain Park Ji-hoon was the first to respond. The destroyer Halasan accelerated toward the Thrakari formation, while its main guns rotated to target the nearest enemy vessels. Human railguns were designed to fire tungsten projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. They could punch through the armor of Earth's most heavily protected bunkers and keep going for kilometers. The first salvo turned 3 Thrakari ships into expanding clouds of metallic vapor. The tungsten slugs hit with so much kinetic energy that the enemy vessels simply ceased to exist as coherent objects. One moment they were threatening alien warships, and the next they were glowing debris scattered across several cubic kilometers of space. The remaining Thrakari formation wavered as their crews tried to understand what had just happened to their comrades. Warlord Vextar screamed orders over their communication channels while demanding to know what kind of weapons the humans were using. His voice carried a note of fear that had not been there before. Commander Han Jiwoo launched her fighter squadron from the Baekdu's hangar bay while the capital ships engaged the main Thrakari force. Human fighters were built to operate in the atmosphere of gas giants, where the pressure could crush most spacecraft and the radiation would kill any unprotected crew. Against alien opponents, they moved like supernatural beings. The small craft darted through the enemy formation faster than Thrakari sensors could track them. Their pilots had learned to fly in Category 5 hurricanes and navigate through asteroid fields during solar storms. The relatively open space around Kepler 442 gave them room to maneuver that they had never experienced before. Pulse lasers designed to cut through Earth's thick atmosphere carved through Thrakari fighters like hot knives through butter. Missile systems that could lock onto targets in electromagnetic interference from Jupiter's radiation belts had no trouble finding enemy ships in the clear vacuum of deep space. Captain Song Minji brought the cruiser Jiri into range and opened fire with her main battery. Human energy weapons were built to function in the hostile environment around Earth's sun, where solar radiation could interfere with most targeting systems. Against the Thrakari, they worked with terrifying efficiency. Coherent energy beams reached out across space and touched enemy vessels with the power of small stars. Thrakari shields that could stop conventional weapons simply did not exist when faced with energies measured in terawatts. Hull plating designed to resist normal laser fire vaporized instantly when hit by beams that could cut through planetary bedrock. The Volani watched from their hiding places in the asteroid field as their attackers were systematically destroyed by forces they could barely comprehend. Elder Thekmil transmitted a continuous stream of amazement and terror as he tried to understand what kind of beings had responded to their distress call. The human ships moved through the Thrakari formation like apex predators, hunting in their natural environment. Every weapon system functioned exactly as designed, while defensive screens absorbed incoming fire without showing any signs of stress. It was not a battle so much as a demonstration of overwhelming technological superiority. Sergeant Yoon Hana led the first boarding party against a disabled Thrakari command ship that had surrendered rather than face complete destruction. Her Marines wore powered armor that could operate in the vacuum of space or the crushing depths of Earth's ocean trenches. Against alien opponents, they were walking nightmares. The boarding tubes attached to the enemy hull and cut through their airlock systems like they were made of paper. Human cutting tools were designed to slice through meteoric rock, and they made quick work of Thrakari armor plating. The Marines entered the alien vessel and began sweeping through its corridors. Thrakari soldiers tried to resist, but their weapons were completely ineffective against human military equipment. Energy rifles that could kill any member of their own species simply could not penetrate the advanced materials and energy shields that protected the boarding party. Return fire from human weapons ended the resistance in minutes. Hana found the ship's detention area, where captured Volani civilians were being held in conditions that made her stomach turn. The peaceful aliens had been chained and beaten while their captors decided what to do with them. Some showed signs of medical experimentation, while others had simply been tortured for entertainment. Admiral, this is Sergeant Hana reporting from the Thrakari command vessel. We have secured the ship and found evidence of systematic abuse against civilian prisoners. These are not honorable warriors, Admiral. They are predators who hunt helpless victims for sport. The battle was effectively over within 2 hours of the first exchange of weapons fire. 47 Thrakari vessels had been destroyed, while the remaining 6 had surrendered after watching their fleet disappear under human firepower. The survivors transmitted desperate pleas for mercy, while their leader, Warlord Vextar, demanded to know what species could possess such devastating military capabilities. Major Choi De-hyun coordinated the boarding actions against the surrendered vessels, while his Marines secured evidence of Thrakari war crimes. They found detailed records of raids against peaceful civilizations, along with cargo holds full of captured aliens from dozens of different species. The extent of their predatory empire was larger than anyone had imagined. The human fleet regrouped around the surviving Vellani ships, while medical teams prepared to treat wounded civilians and assessment specialists tried to understand the technology they had captured. Commander Lee Sora worked with Elder Thekmiel to establish proper communication protocols and begin the process of formal first contact. Captain Jehoon reported minimal damage to his destroyer, despite being the focus of concentrated enemy fire during the opening minutes of the battle. A few scorch marks on the hull plating and some minor strain on the shield generators were the only signs that the Halasan had been in combat at all. The Thrakari, who had threatened to destroy the human fleet, were now prisoners aboard their own ships while human Marines sorted through the evidence of their crimes. Their weapons, which had seemed so formidable when used against peaceful traders, were revealed to be primitive tools compared to the arsenal that Earth had developed for survival in a hostile universe. Admiral Kang looked around his bridge at the calm efficiency of his crew as they processed the aftermath of humanity's first interstellar conflict. His people had responded to a distress call from strangers and ended up demonstrating that Earth's children were the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. The Vellani were safe and their attackers were defeated, but the implications of what had just happened would echo across the known worlds for generations to come. Humanity had announced its presence to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible by utterly destroying a predatory species that had terrorized peaceful civilizations for decades. News of the battle would spread through alien communication networks and reach species that had never heard of Earth or humans. They would learn that somewhere in the galaxy there existed a race of beings so adapted to violence and survival that interstellar warfare was just another day at the office. The Deathworlders had emerged from their isolated system, and nothing would ever be the same. The medical bay of the Baekdu had been converted into a temporary hospital for the Vellani survivors who needed treatment after their ordeal with the Thrakari raiders. Dr. Nam So-young worked carefully with her team to understand the alien physiology, while providing care for injuries that ranged from minor cuts to severe trauma from torture and experimentation. Elder Thekmiel lay on one of the medical beds, while scanners analyzed his biological structure and tried to determine what kind of world had produced his species. The results painted a picture of beings who had evolved in conditions so gentle that Earth would kill them in minutes if they were not protected by advanced life support systems. Admiral Kang Minho stood beside the medical bed and watched as translation software worked to improve communication between the two species. The Vellani leader was a small creature with pale blue skin and large eyes that seemed designed for low-light conditions. His limbs were thin and delicate in a way that spoke of low gravity and peaceful evolution. The gravity on our homeworld is less than half of what your ship maintains, Admiral. The atmospheric pressure is also much lower, and we require specific gas mixtures to breathe properly. Your medical equipment is keeping me alive, but I would die quickly in your natural environment. Dr. So-young adjusted the environmental controls around the Elder's bed to match the conditions his species required for survival. The modifications were simple enough, but they highlighted just how different humans were from most other intelligent life in the galaxy. Earth had forced its children to adapt to conditions that would be considered lethal by almost any other standard. Commander Lee Sora arrived in the medical bay carrying data tablets filled with information gathered from the rescued Vellani civilians and captured Thrakari databases. Her xenobiology training had prepared her for first contact scenarios, but the reality was more complex than any simulation could predict. Admiral, I have some disturbing information about the galactic situation. The Thrakari Empire has been expanding for over 50 years, and they have conquered or destroyed dozens of peaceful species. Most civilizations in this region of space have heard rumors about their activities, but no one has been able to stop them. She activated a holographic display that showed the star charts recovered from Thrakari navigation computers. Red markers indicated systems that had been raided, while yellow ones marked targets that were being evaluated for future attacks. The scale of their predatory empire was staggering. Elder Techmeal struggled to sit up in his medical bed as he recognized some of the star positions on the display. His people had traded with many of the species that were now marked as conquered or destroyed by Thrakari forces. The scope of the genocide made him feel sick with grief and helplessness. The Kithara aquatic civilization was wiped out 6 months ago. The Nendari crystal entities surrendered their homeworld rather than face complete extermination. Dozens of other species have simply vanished from the trade networks without any word about what happened to them. Linguist Bai Gyong-su worked at a nearby station where he was analyzing the linguistic patterns and cultural references found in Vellani and Thrakari communications. His specialty was understanding how language reflected the thinking and values of different species. What he found was deeply troubling. The Thrakari do not consider other intelligent species to be equals, Admiral. Their language has no words for concepts like negotiation or peaceful coexistence. They view the galaxy as divided between predators like themselves and prey species that exist only to be hunted and consumed. Captain Park Ji-hoon joined the conversation as his image appeared on the communication screen from the bridge of his destroyer. His ship was maintaining a patrol pattern around the Vellani convoy, while human engineers worked to repair their damaged vessels and improve their defensive capabilities. Admiral, we are receiving long-range communications from multiple star systems. Word is spreading that the Thrakari fleet was destroyed, and species throughout this region are asking if the reports are true. Some of them are requesting immediate assistance against Thrakari forces in their own territories. The tactical display, updated with incoming messages from civilizations that the humans had never heard of before. Each transmission carried the same desperate hope that maybe the beings who had defeated the Thrakari could help them survive against the predatory empire that had terrorized the galaxy for decades. Major Choi Dae-hyun appeared on another communication channel from the brig where captured Thrakari officers were being interrogated by human intelligence specialists. His expression was grim as he reported what they had learned from their prisoners about the scope of the threat facing peaceful civilizations. Admiral, these raiders were just a small part of a much larger military force. The Thrakari Empire has hundreds of ships spread across dozens of star systems, and they consider this entire region to be their hunting ground. They have never encountered serious resistance before. Elder Thekmil activated his own communication device and began broadcasting a message to Vellani colonies throughout known space. His voice carried a mixture of relief and amazement as he described what he had witnessed during the battle with the human fleet. My people, this is Elder Thekmil speaking from aboard a vessel of the beings who call themselves humans. They responded to our distress call and destroyed the entire Thrakari force without losing a single ship. These creatures possess weapons and defenses beyond anything we thought possible. Dr. So-young continued her medical scans while listening to the ongoing conversations about galactic politics and military threats. Her instruments were revealing biological details that explained why humans were so different from other intelligent species in the galaxy. Admiral, the Vellani evolved on a world with stable weather patterns and abundant resources. Their bodies show no adaptations for dealing with environmental stress or physical conflict. Most alien species seem to have developed in similar conditions of peace and plenty. Commander Lee accessed the database of information that humans had gathered about Earth's evolutionary history and began comparing it with what they were learning about alien homeworlds. The differences were stark and helped explain why humanity had developed such advanced military capabilities. Earth forced our ancestors to survive ice ages and volcanic eruptions and meteor impacts that would have wiped out most other species. Every major extinction event made the survivors stronger and more adaptable. We are the product of 4 billion years of constant warfare against a planet that was trying to kill us. The communication channels filled with incoming messages from species throughout the local region of the galaxy as news of the Thrakari defeat spread faster than light through subspace networks. Each alien civilization had its own desperate story of raids and losses while begging for protection against predators they could not resist. Captain Song Minji reported from her cruiser that long-range sensors were detecting Thrakari reinforcements, moving toward their position from multiple directions. The destruction of Warlord Vextar's fleet had been noticed by the larger empire, and they were responding with overwhelming force to eliminate whatever new threat had emerged. Admiral, we have at least 200 enemy contacts approaching from different vectors. They will arrive within 12 hours, and their combined firepower is 10 times larger than what we just faced. The Thrakari are not taking any chances with whoever destroyed their raiding fleet. Elder Thekmiel heard the report and felt his hope crumble as he realized that even these miraculous humans might not be able to stand against the full military might of the Thrakari Empire. His people would be exterminated along with their rescuers, and the galaxy would return to the nightmare of predatory species hunting helpless civilizations. Minho looked around the medical bay at the faces of humans and aliens alike as they contemplated the approaching threat. His crew showed no signs of fear or doubt, despite being outnumbered by 20-1 against an enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for generations. Earth had taught them that survival meant fighting against impossible odds and winning through superior technology and determination. The Thrakari Empire was about to learn why humans were considered the ultimate apex predators in a galaxy full of species that had never learned how to fight for their lives. Admiral Kang Minho stood in the command center of the Baekdu and studied the tactical display showing 200 Thrakari warships approaching from multiple directions. The enemy fleet was larger than anything humans had ever faced in combat, but his crew showed no signs of panic or fear. Earth had taught them that impossible odds were just another day at the office for apex predators. The Thrakari reinforcements arrived in waves as their commanders tried to surround the human fleet and cut off any possibility of escape. Their ships were larger and more heavily armed than the raiders they had already defeated, but they still used the same primitive technology that had proven useless against human defenses. Captain Park Ji-hoon moved his destroyer squadron into position to screen the Vellani convoy while the main battle fleet prepared to engage the approaching enemy forces. His tactical analysis showed that the Thrakari were using standard military formations designed for fighting other alien species rather than adapting to the unique threat that humans represented. Admiral, they are treating us like any other spacefaring civilization they have encountered. Their battle plans assume we will fight according to galactic norms for warfare rather than Earth military doctrine. This gives us a significant tactical advantage. Commander Lee Sora worked frantically in the xenobiology department to analyze captured Thrakari databases and understand the full scope of their predatory empire. What she found painted a terrifying picture of systematic genocide that had been going on for decades while peaceful species throughout the galaxy suffered in silence. The Thrakari have destroyed over 40 intelligent civilizations in this region of space alone, Admiral. They keep detailed records of their conquests, including population counts and resource extraction statistics. This is not random raiding, but organized extermination on an industrial scale. Elder Thekmiel transmitted a final message to Vellani colonies throughout known space, while human engineers worked to repair his damaged ship. His voice carried a mixture of gratitude and desperation as he described the approaching battle that would determine the fate of every peaceful species in the galaxy. My people, we may not survive what is coming, but we have been honored to meet the beings called humans. They fight not for conquest or resources, but to protect strangers who called for help. If we die today, we die knowing that somewhere in the universe there exist creatures who value justice more than power. The first wave of Thrakari ships entered weapons range and opened fire with concentrated barrages that lit up space like artificial stars. Energy beams and kinetic projectiles filled the void between the two fleets, while alien commanders tried to overwhelm human defenses through sheer volume of fire. The attacks struck human shields and were absorbed by defensive systems designed to operate in the radiation fields around neutron stars and the crushing gravitational wells of black holes. Weapons that could destroy any other known spacecraft simply could not penetrate barriers built to withstand the most hostile environments in the universe. Captain Song Minji responded with a full broadside from her cruiser Jiri that turned 6 enemy vessels into expanding clouds of superheated plasma. Human energy weapons reached across space with the power of small suns, while railgun projectiles traveled at velocities that made them essentially unstoppable. The Thrakari formation wavered as their commanders realized they were facing the same impossible situation that had destroyed the initial raiding fleet. Their most powerful weapons could not harm the enemy, while return fire was obliterating their ships with casual efficiency. Commander Han Ji-woo launched her expanded fighter wing from multiple human vessels while the capital ships engaged the main enemy force. Her pilots had been reinforced by volunteers from every ship in the fleet who wanted to participate in humanity's first major interstellar battle. The fighters swept through Thrakari formations like deadly insects programmed for destruction. Their pilots used tactics developed for combat in Earth's most dangerous environments, while their weapons systems performed far beyond the design specifications of any alien technology. Major Choi Dae-hyun coordinated boarding actions against surrendered enemy vessels, while his Marines worked to free captured civilians from dozens of different species. Each alien ship they secured revealed new evidence of Thrakari war crimes and the scope of their predatory activities. Admiral, we have recovered over 3,000 prisoners from various civilizations that the Thrakari have been holding as slaves or experimental subjects. Some of these species were thought to be extinct after their homeworlds were destroyed months ago. The battle continued for 6 hours, as wave after wave of Thrakari reinforcements arrived only to be systematically destroyed by human firepower. Enemy commanders tried every tactical formation and strategic approach they knew, but nothing could overcome the fundamental technological gap between their primitive weapons and Earth military systems. Sergeant Yoon Hana led boarding parties against command ships while seeking to capture high-ranking Thrakari officers who might have information about the location of their main bases and military installations. Her Marines moved through alien vessels like unstoppable forces of nature while enemy resistance crumbled before them. The tide of battle turned completely when Captain Im Tae-wan intercepted communications between surviving Thrakari vessels and their home base in a distant star system. The enemy commanders were requesting immediate evacuation while reporting that they had encountered the legendary Deathworld species that galactic civilization had always feared. Admiral, this is Captain Tae-wan reporting from the frigate Sorak. The Thrakari are transmitting detailed information about human military capabilities to their central command. They know who we are, and they are terrified of what our presence means for their empire. The final Thrakari ships in the system either surrendered or fled toward deep space, while their commanders abandoned any hope of victory against opponents who seemed to violate every law of warfare they understood. Human vessels pursued the fleeing raiders and destroyed them with long-range weapons that could track targets across interstellar distances. Elder Thekmil stood in the observation deck of his repaired ship and watched as the human fleet regrouped around the Villani convoy. The battle that he had thought would end in mutual destruction had instead resulted in complete victory for the beings who had responded to their distress call. Commander Lee compiled reports from liberated prisoners and captured databases that revealed the locations of Thrakari bases throughout the local region of the galaxy. The information provided targeting data for military strikes that could cripple their ability to conduct further raids against peaceful civilizations. Admiral, we now have enough intelligence to launch coordinated attacks against every major Thrakari installation within 50 light years. We can end their predatory empire permanently if we act quickly before they have time to reorganize their defenses. Minho looked around his command center at the faces of his crew as they processed the implications of what they had accomplished. Humanity had won its first interstellar war against overwhelming odds while saving the lives of thousands of alien civilians from dozens of different species. The communication channels filled with incoming messages from grateful civilizations throughout the galaxy as news of the Thrakari defeat spread through subspace networks. Species that had lived in fear for generations suddenly had hope that their nightmare might finally be ending. The Kithera aquatic survivors transmitted from hidden colonies where they had been waiting for extinction. The Nendari crystal entities emerged from underground shelters on their conquered homeworld. Dozens of other species sent representatives to make contact with the humans who had accomplished what no one thought possible. Captain Jihoon reported that his destroyers were detecting Thrakari evacuation fleets, fleeing from bases throughout the region as word spread about the destruction of their main military force. The predatory empire was collapsing as quickly as it had expanded when faced with opponents they could not defeat or intimidate. Admiral, request permission to begin liberation operations against remaining Thrakari strongholds. My ships are ready to hunt down every last raider in this sector and ensure they can never threaten peaceful species again. The tactical display updated with target locations as human intelligence specialists analyzed captured data and planned the campaign that would end the Thrakari threat permanently. Each base would be destroyed with the same overwhelming force that had characterized every human military action since their arrival in the system. Elder Thekmil activated the Galactic Communication Network and began broadcasting a message that would be heard by every intelligent species within 1,000 light years. His voice carried across space to worlds where civilizations waited in fear for news of whether their protectors had survived. This is Elder Thekmil of the Vallani, speaking to all free peoples of the galaxy. The predators who have terrorized us for so long have been defeated by beings called humans who came from a world beyond our understanding. They fight not for conquest but for justice, and they have given us hope that peace can return to the stars.